The storm hit faster than anyone could anticipate, a merciless wall of rain and wind that tore through the coast with the ferocity of a wild animal. The small charter boat that Jack, a single dad juggling 2 jobs and endless responsibilities, had taken with his boss, Miss Eleanor Grant, rocked violently, its hull shuddering under the onslaught. Jack gripped the railing with white-knuckled determination, heart hammering not just from fear, but from the overwhelming realization that their lives were hanging by a thread. He was far from home, far from his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, and stranded with the woman he barely knew outside the walls of their corporate office. Eleanor, the high-powered CEO known for her uncompromising standards and icy demeanor, clutched the railing beside him, her expression unreadable, but her panic as raw and real as his own. The sea roared like a beast determined to swallow them whole, waves crashing over the deck, drenching them to the bone. And then, with a sudden, sickening jolt, the boat capsized, throwing Jack and Eleanor into the merciless waters, tearing them from everything familiar. If you believe in the power of kindness and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel, because this story shows how one small act can change lives forever. Jack awoke hours later, coughing and shivering on the coarse sand of a deserted island. Pain lanced through his body, his ribs bruised, cuts on his arms stinging, but worse was the hollow fear gnawing at him. Somewhere along the jagged shoreline he spotted Eleanor, barely conscious, tangled in debris from the wreck. He scrambled toward her, driven by instinct and an unfamiliar surge of protectiveness. He had always been a fighter, a survivor for the sake of his daughter, but never had the stakes felt so terrifyingly personal. He pulled her to safety, dragging her from the water, and for the first time in years he allowed himself to feel utterly powerless. She was silent, her chest rising and falling in uneven gasps. The wind carried the taste of salt and despair, and Jack felt the crushing weight of isolation. They were alone, completely, terrifyingly alone. The first night on the island was relentless. They built a makeshift shelter from broken planks and fronds, Jack's hands raw and bleeding, while Eleanor, pale and still weak, watched him with a mixture of awe and confusion. Her corporate armor, the sharpness that had commanded boardrooms, was gone here, leaving only a human being, vulnerable and uncertain. Jack worked silently, glancing at her occasionally, and in those quiet moments he realized something he hadn't anticipated. He didn't hate her. He didn't resent the long hours or impossible deadlines or the cold demands she had placed on him at work. He only felt an odd kinship, a recognition that this woman, too, had a life weighed down by expectations, obligations, and the invisible chains of a world that demanded perfection. The days blended into each other. Food was scarce, limited to coconuts, fish caught with makeshift spears, and the occasional berry. Water was rationed carefully, and every morning Jack would make a trek to a small freshwater stream he had discovered, balancing Eleanor's fragile strength with his own relentless determination. He learned things about her he would never have imagined. The quiet way she hummed to herself when in pain, the way she thanked him for every small gesture, her eyes softening in gratitude where once they had been steel. He realized that for all her power and wealth, Eleanor had never been truly seen for who she was. Here, on this island stripped of everything, she was just Eleanor. And for the first time, Jack found himself respecting her not as a boss or authority figure, but as a person, a flawed, beautiful, human soul. Survival forced them into an intimacy neither had anticipated. Jack taught her how to catch fish, how to find coconuts that were safe to eat, how to create a fire using nothing but sticks and a small flint he had salvaged. In return, Eleanor shared memories of her past, stories of a childhood filled with responsibility, of losing her parents too soon, of learning to rely on herself in a world that never showed mercy. Jack, in turn, told her about Lily, the little girl who had been his reason for every long shift, every sacrifice, every moment of exhaustion that had never quite broken him. In those exchanges, each revelation carved away at the invisible barriers between them. They laughed, they cried, they argued over trivialities, and in the quiet moments, they simply existed together, human beings bound by circumstance, learning the power of trust in its purest form. But life on the island was harsh, and the strain began to take its toll. Jack's bruises throbbed constantly, Eleanor's health wavered precariously, and the endless isolation pressed on their minds like a vice. One morning, Eleanor collapsed near the stream. Jack's heart lurched as he carried her back to their shelter, her body limp, her skin clammy with fever. For hours, he tended her, wrapping her in damp leaves, forcing her to drink water, whispering words of encouragement as if sheer will could replace medicine. In that moment, Jack's thoughts drifted constantly to Lily. He thought of her bright eyes, the way she hugged him, the way she had insisted on bringing her little backpack full of crayons and snacks every time she came to see him. He wondered if he would ever see her again, if he could survive this nightmare to return home. But he also realized, with a deep, sobering clarity, that his duty was now to the woman beside him, to keep her alive, to protect her as fiercely as he had protected his daughter. Days turned into weeks, the sun scorched their backs, the rain lashed at their makeshift shelter, and the nights were filled with the cries of distant animals. Yet in this relentless struggle, Jack noticed a shift. Eleanor's gratitude was no longer quiet or tentative, it was profound, almost reverent. She watched him, studied his determination, and slowly, the walls around her heart began to crumble. She confessed that she had always admired him at work, though she had never shown it, and that she had underestimated him, underestimated the strength it took to live as a single parent, underestimated the courage of someone whose life demanded resilience at every turn. Jack, for his part, saw her differently now. The woman who had seemed untouchable, almost untouchably rigid, revealed layers of vulnerability and humanity that touched him deeply. Then came the moment that would change everything. The moment that left Jack breathless, staring into eyes filled with both fear and hope. Eleanor, weak from illness and exhaustion, reached for his hand. Her voice, faint but clear, trembled as she made a request he had never expected. She asked him to promise her something, that if either of them survived this ordeal, he would carry forward a message of compassion, of understanding, of seeing people not as roles or titles but as human beings deserving of kindness. Her final request was not a plea for herself, but a plea for a world she hoped could be better because of him. Jack's throat tightened, words failed him. He nodded silently, feeling the weight of her request settle on his shoulders like a mantle. It was a request that demanded courage beyond survival. It demanded transformation. The following days tested them further. A minor injury, a storm that tore their shelter apart, moments of despair where hope seemed to vanish. But through every challenge, Jack's resolve never wavered. He held Eleanor close when the nights were cold, encouraged her when she faltered, and continued to fight for both of their lives, driven not just by duty, but by a burgeoning sense of purpose. And slowly, impossibly, help arrived. A passing fishing vessel spotted the smoke from their fire, and rescue came in the form of strangers with kind eyes and steady hands. They were taken from the island, each step away from the sand feeling surreal, almost like waking from a nightmare. But the story didn't end with the rescue. Back on solid ground, Eleanor, now healthy, invited Jack to her office, not as her employee but as someone she considered a partner in a mission far greater than either of them. She kept her promise to the island. She advocated for the programs Jack had dreamed of for single parents, funding initiatives that provided support, mentorship, and opportunities for those like him. And Jack, once just a man struggling to make ends meet, found his life changed in ways he could never have imagined. Not by money, not by fame, but by the recognition of his humanity, his resilience, and the quiet, enduring power of kindness. Jack returned home to Lily, holding her tightly, tears streaming down both their faces. The experience had reshaped him, made him stronger, more aware of the fragile, precious beauty of life and connection. And Eleanor, forever grateful, never forgot the man who had saved her, who had survived alongside her, who had carried forward her final request with honor and heart. Their bond, forged in desperation and strengthened by trust, remained unbroken, a testament to the extraordinary human capacity for courage, compassion, and change. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, and share it. Your support helps stories like this reach more people who need inspiration and hope in their lives. And before you go, leave a comment telling us what small act of kindness has changed your life. Because sometimes the simplest gestures have the most profound impact. Because in the end, life isn't about titles, power, or possessions. It's about the moments where we see each other as human beings, and choose to lift one another up, even when the world seems determined to keep us apart. And for Jack and Eleanor, that choice changed everything. Word count, approximately 1,810 words. This story is structured for a cinematic YouTube narration, with emotional highs, suspenseful moments, character development, and clear calls to action woven naturally into the narrative. If you want, I can also create an SEO-optimized YouTube description, keywords, and hashtags specifically tailored to maximize reach and engagement for this video story. Do you want me to do that next?